Imagine if starting today, every word you saw was written in Helvetica. Every bakery sign, every yogurt label. Imagine receiving a passionate love letter in Helvetica. It's clean, it's neutral, it's perfect. But would it make your heart race? Would a bakery feel warm and sweet? Here's the idea I want to share with you today. The shape of words influences how we feel, what we trust, and how we move through the world, often before our brain reads a single word. Letter forms are the gestures of language, our tone of voice in written form. But I know some of you may be thinking, come on, it's just a words look. I get it. I draw letters for a living, and I used to think my work was pretty, but not powerful, until I became a South American immigrant in Germany, and letter forms saved my life. When I first moved to Berlin, I didn't know a word of German. Suddenly, even simple things felt complicated. Buying groceries, reading a menu, everything was full of impossible words. In those early months, my world felt quiet. I couldn't follow conversations or read the signs around me, but I could see them. I recognized places where tradition still mattered, and I could tell when something was meant to last. And I could recognize danger even without understanding a single word. Those shapes became my map. They helped me move through the city long before I could ask for directions. That's when I realized Berlin was speaking to me in a language of form, not words. And in some cases, that language kept me safe. That moment changed how I saw my work, not as decoration, but as human communication. When I design letter forms, I'm always aware of the messages hiding in their shape. Every curve, every angle carries meaning. We all share certain visual associations, even without realizing. We read geometry, squares, circles, triangles as rational and objective. It's why sans serif letters feel clean, efficient, modern, something Helvetica does very well, and TED's logo as well. We read handwriting as human and warm, and even if it's drawn in the computer, our brain reads or can see the hand behind it. And we read serif letters, the ones with little feet, as steady and traditional, like Roman inscriptions carved in stone. They feel trustworthy, made to last. We all learn this without learning it. Our brains have been reading shapes since childhood. And I just use these cues to shape meaning. I can draw the word love so that it feels airy and spontaneous, or heavy and passionate, the kind your friends warn you about. And it goes way beyond the style. I spend hours drawing the tiniest details, not to make things pretty, but to make them clear. A rounded letter like O looks smaller than a straight like H, even if they are the same size. So we draw it a bit taller, just so it looks equal to your eye. A perfect X looks broken, so we adjust the crossing to make it look right. You don't notice these decisions, but your brain does, and it reacts before you read the words. We think we read words first, but shape hits us much faster. Look at this hand-painted bakery sign in Paris. Soft curves, tiny imperfections. You think warm, human. You just know that bread is good. Look at this. Sharp angles, all caps. Your body knows instantly. Back off. Two signs, two opposite feelings, delivered in a fraction of a second. Because every message has two voices, the words and the way they are shaped. And most of the time, the shape speaks first. And if shape can influence what we feel, it can influence what we choose. Could the way words look influence something as big as an election? I'm not saying design wins elections, but Comic Sans may not help. If shape can guide a single moment or choice, imagine what it does across an entire city. Cities speak in different letter forms. In Los Angeles, entertainment industry turned neon into a visual identity, bright, bold letters meant to be seen. In Buenos Aires, Italian immigrants created Fileteado Porteño, hand-painted letters with colors and flourish and pride. In Tokyo, centuries of calligraphy influenced everyday signage. Careful strokes, careful spacing, a quiet sense of discipline. These letter forms are instant messages of where we are and what matters here. The same way I navigated Berlin without understanding the language, we all rely on these visual cues to understand the world around us. Helvetica imagined a world of order, calm, neutral, universal. But the world isn't neutral. It's full of character and history, visible in the shape of its words. Uniformity is easy, but it's the details, the differences, the choices that make the word legible. Because the language of letter forms is everywhere, quietly shaping how we feel, what we trust, and how we understand the world. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Thank you.